What is up, freaks? It's your boy Marty Bent here to introduce this episode of Tales from the Crypt. I had an incredible time sitting down with Bethany Hamilton and her husband Adam Dirks. Pro surfer Bethany Hamilton. Inspiration Bethany Hamilton. To talk about Bitcoin and a little bit of surfing. I thought it was going to be like, hey, let's talk surfing and how it relates to Bitcoin. We did a little bit of that towards the end of the episode, but it turned into Bethany and Adam turning the tables on me and asking me Bitcoin 101 questions. Let me know how I did, freaks. It was a fun episode. Think you guys are going to like it. Let me know how my pitch is, whether or not I need to work on it, simplify it. Did my best. My wife's still not happy. This app was brought to you by our good friends at the motherfucking Cash App. Cash App, somebody stack sats, send sats, receive sats, sell sats. If you so please. We're saying sats, because sats are the standard. 100 million sats in one whole Bitcoin. You don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You don't have to buy a fraction of Bitcoin. You can buy whole sats as little as $1 on the Cash App. DCA the sats. Dollar cost average. We're going back and forth. I'm not going to say every 2 weeks anymore. Somebody reach out to me in DMs. It's every 2 weeks has always been bi-weekly. Do not budge. Matt, I'm not budging. You can DCA in the sats daily, weekly, or bi-weekly using the Cash App. It's every 2 weeks for those not in the know. They also have the boost card. You can personalize it. I got my neon green boost card, my Bitcoin and my Lightning side on it. Really dope conversation starter. Cash App would be your bank account, offering account numbers and routing numbers, and get your paychecks direct deposited into the app, and a bunch of other stuff. Their boost program as well. Go check it out. If you haven't downloaded the app yet, make sure you use the code STACKINGSATS. It's STACKINGSATS. You're going to get $10, and $10 is going to go to our good friends at Owls Lacrosse. That's Owls Lacrosse. This rep was also brought to you by our good friends at Hodl Hodl. Hodl Hodl is here to bring you a lending product. If you don't want to sell your Bitcoin, you don't want to give it up, you need liquidity, you put your Bitcoin up as collateral using Lend at Hodl Hodl. Lend is the lending platform at Hodl Hodl. And it's a new non-custodial Bitcoin-backed lending platform that allows peer-to-peer lending and borrowing between users globally, anonymously, and on your own terms. No KYC, no AML. Available to U.S. citizens because it's non-custodial. How is it non-custodial? They leverage Bitcoin's native multi-sig properties to create a multi-sig escrow in which you hold one key, your counterparty holds one key, and Hodl Hodl holds the third key. You always have the ability to make sure that your sats are in that multi-sig wallet so you know they're not being rehypothecated. You put your Bitcoin in there, you get stable coins in return. As long as you're paying back that loan that you received, you're going to get your Bitcoin back at the end of the loan. And you can, again, make sure it's not being rehypothecated. If you're short of funds and you don't want to sell your Bitcoin, think of this. Multi-sig escrow remains locked in there. Your counterparty has a key. Hodl Hodl has a key. You have a key. And if you have some stable coins laying around, you want to get some yield on those, enter the other side of the order book. Put them up to be lent out. You put them up to be lent out. You get a key in that multi-sig. Make sure the Bitcoin's there. You lend out your stable coins, and you get paid with a little bit of interest for loaning them out. Create your own offers and set your own terms at lend.hodlhodl.com. That's lend.hodlhodl.com. Again, this one's available for American citizens. Go check it out. This episode is also brought to you by good friends at Compass Mining. Compass Mining is here to simplify mining for individuals. It's a hard thing. Acquiring a miner, finding cheap electricity. A lot of people go in secondary markets, buy used miners, plug it into their house at 14 cents a kilowatt hour. It's not really economical. Compass Mining is here to get individuals into the mining game at competitive electricity costs. All right, so what you do is you go to compassmining.io, compassmining.io. You purchase a miner. They have different models. You pick your model that you want. You purchase it. Compass acquires it for you, and then after you purchase your miner, you pick a hosting facility with competitive electricity costs. So you pick your miner, you buy your miner, you pick your hosting facility, set that contract up. Compass gets the miner, plugs it in that hosting facility, and starts streaming you sats to a wallet of your choice. It's a beautiful thing. Go check it out, compassmining.io. We actually have a specific link in the show notes if you want to support the show and you're thinking about using Compass. If you use a link in the show notes, that would help us out and help us stack some sats. Last but not least, this rip was brought to you by our good friends at Brains. Brains is the team behind Slush Pool. Slush Pool's pretty dope. First ever mining pool. Ever heard of it? Mining pools, ever heard of them? Pretty important for the Bitcoin industry. But we're here to talk about the Brains OS Plus Manager, which is an online platform that allows miners to remotely monitor and manage all of their ASICs running Brains OS Plus. This can help miners improve uptime and keep their farms running optimally without the hassle of needing to be on site 24/7. Eliminate the hassle. Make sure you're running Brains OS firmware, which allows you to stack more sats with your hash. And then run this manager, and you don't have to be on site 24/7. The manager is also free and always will be free for Brains OS Plus miners, and they can connect it to an unlimited number of devices. And you can monitor it on your phone, your laptop, your tablet, whatever tickles your fancy, whatever gets you all hot and bothered at the end of the day. Security and efficiency were top priorities. Brains OS Plus Manager uses Stratum v2 for smaller and less frequent data transfers, with all ASIC configuration and telemetry data being sent via encrypted connections, which protect against eavesdropping and man-in-the-middle attacks. Protect yourself from hash rate hijacking. Make sure your hash is going and producing for you and not some hacker. For details on the manager and how to set it up with your mining operation, go to brains.com/blog. That's BRAIINSII. Don't forget the double I.com/blog and check out the Brains OS Plus Manager launch article. Brains, BRAIINS.com blog. Brains OS Plus Manager launch. Slush Pool is also getting its first major update soon. We've been saying this for like weeks now. What's happening, Slush Pool? The update hasn't been launched just yet, but I can tell you that it's going to include ultra flexible payout systems, customizable mining reward splitting, and best of all, dark theme for 24/7 hash rate monitoring. That's easy on the eyes. Protect your eyes. Follow slush_pool on Twitter to see the announcement when the pool update goes live. And enjoy this episode with Bethany and Adam again. I had a lot of fun doing this, being put on the spot to do Bitcoin 101. Not easy, but you got to practice. Enjoy.
You've had a dynamic where money's become freer than free.
If you talk about a Fed just gone nuts, all the central banks going nuts.
So it's all acting like safe haven.
I believe that in a world where central bankers are tripping over themselves to devalue their currency, Bitcoin wins. In the world of fiat currencies, Bitcoin is the victor.
I mean, that's part of the bull case for Bitcoin.
If you're not paying attention, you probably should be.
And now we're recording. What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. Very excited for this episode. Sitting down with Bethany Hamilton and Adam Dirks to talk about Bitcoin, surfing, whatever it may be. I'm fanboying a bit right now. We were just talking before we hit record. The hat I'm wearing, Surfer Supplies, is from your dad's hometown, which is pretty crazy, Bethany.
Yeah, so my dad grew up kind of near where you live, Ocean City, New Jersey, and the hat you're wearing is probably one of his first jobs. I'm not exactly sure, but he definitely worked there at some point. So
did ding repair there for years, he said. He's still a ding repair man.
Yeah, he does my ding repair now.
What kind of repair? What kind of repair?
Ding repair. Yeah,
surfboard
repair.
For surfboards,
yeah,
they get like dings in them, and then you have to,
Yeah, so I mean, the reason we're here is because you've got laser eyes on Twitter, and you wrote an incredible piece called "The Silver Lining," explaining how you fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole last year with the lockdowns, forced to stay home, not able to travel the world to find waves, and you saw the money printing going on, and we're like, what the hell's going on here? And sort of discovered Bitcoin that way. And one of the books that stuck out to you was "Thank God for Bitcoin," and you're sort of on this journey. So definitely want to talk about that experience, but also I understand you guys have some questions, want to go over some Bitcoin 101 stuff, so we can definitely do that as well. So I'm very excited for this.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're stoked to be here. It's been a cool year of like learning about Bitcoin and going down that just trying to grasp and understand it. And I think my brother has actually been a fan for like
5 years. Time. He said he's been telling about it.
But
he's been telling us, but we had no idea.
We never heard what he said. We just went in one ear, out the other. And I think because like he's my older brother, it's just like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
You know. Or a younger sister rebellion.
I'm that older brother, so I've
But now I'm in his shoes of like trying to communicate And I'm realizing like, oh my gosh, I just sound like my older brother right now, just like trying to tell people that it goes in when you're out the other, and they just think, they just tell me like all the things that are kind of like the most basic understanding or lack of understanding is like the common responses. So it'd be really cool to kind of go back and forth. Like you can share some of your knowledge. We'll just share a little bit of our journey. And Adam's definitely been at the forefront. And
I've been trying to learn. Yeah, I feel like this last year, I mean, before this last year happened, I feel like with most things in life, especially with like faith, and it's funny how like faith and Bitcoin kind of intertwine, because it almost takes a rock bottom moment in your life to kind of like realize like, you know, it's all butterflies and rainbows, everything's going really good. And then it took something really gnarly to happen and to realize like, whoa, everything's really not okay. Like there's just so much going on in the world that we're not seeing. And then like when your eyes are open, you're like, okay, we need to do something about this. And where can we go? What can we do to like not only help our situation, but how can we help others as well in their times of need and trouble? So that's kind of like the beginning of what began our journey into looking into Bitcoin, kind of like how we talked about that in the silver lining.
It probably should have been the orange lining.
We contemplate calling it the orange lining.
After I was like, oh gosh, people are probably cringing on silver right now.
Yeah.
It's whatever. The message was just as good, no matter the title of the post. But was there like a particular event that happened last year? I mean, obviously the lockdowns happened, but were you noticing the Fed printing all this money, or was it the money, the stimulus checks? Was there anything particular that?
Yeah, like personally, our financial well-being went, like basically all our income got cut in maybe half or less at one point, and that was like, we weren't ready for that. We weren't like prepared necessarily. We were okay, but it kind of was like, whoa, what if something like this happens and continues, you know, then what do we do? So we started to just kind of feel from a personal standpoint, like how can we get out of this situation, or prepare in the future for just being in a healthier place. And then seeing the amount of money being printed, I think it was like 25% of all the money ever printed in the last like 18 months. And I don't know if everyone understands like what that does to the US dollar in particular. And so we started to kind of run down that and try to figure that out and how that looks. And I'm still like, I keep telling my friends, like, your money is not, like, your savings in particular are not safe in the US dollar, but they keep saying like the opposite.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things, right? One of the, I guess, adages that people fall back on when they're trying to describe Bitcoin, and more particularly money specifically, is people, we just go through life. We were born and you're running and you're just going on. You never stop to think about, wait, what is money? Like, you just take it for granted, right? And I think it's safe to say that around the, or I don't want to say around the world, there's definitely a place like Venezuela, Argentina, Turkey, Lebanon, where people are like, all right, like, we really need to figure out what is money. But particularly here in the Western world, for quite a while, we've had the privilege of being able to be complacent, not really have to question what money is or its purpose, or more importantly, what a good money should look like, and being able to identify that. And so I think last year with the M2 money stock going up by 25%, what took literally 108 years to get to one point. And then it was you added 25% of that 108-year effort in the course of 12 months. It's pretty jarring, where it begins to shake people like, oh, maybe we should be paying attention to this. And it's a good sign that more and more people are. It's pretty heavy what's going on, but to solve a problem, you first have to identify it. And it seems like more and more people are starting to identify it.
Yeah, and it's something that I feel like in our schools and education system, like, it's not something that's being taught. And I like Jimmy in his book, Thank God for Bitcoin, and we recently met up with Robert Breedlove and talking to him, and he brought up a good point. Like, you can go to college and in all these financial classes, and they don't talk about, like, you almost talk about how the current financial system is like a deity. You don't question it. Like what it is, it is. But it's like, oh man, there's a lot to learn. Yeah.
I majored in economics in college and didn't learn a thing about money, or like how it was just monetary policy. It was Keynesian monetary policy specifically was what we were taught, but we never got down to talking about actual monetary goods and the properties they should have: salability, fungibility, divisibility, and relative scarcity. That was never mentioned in my 4-year.
So interesting. What's your take on that? Why do you think they aren't teaching?
I try not to like be pessimistic, but like there's a concerted effort to make sure that people don't know what's going on. I think and the way the current monetary system set up is like cash and money isn't really important to the academic economists that are in charge. They're more worried about like manipulate interest rate targeting and stuff like that, and supply side factors that they don't think it's important. So they don't, in terms of being integral for an economy, they think the ability to manipulate that stuff makes the actual monetary good irrelevant, and so they don't focus on it at all. And so you don't learn about it until you graduate college and you fall down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and you're like, wait a second, this makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
mean, it just like all the qualities of Bitcoin just seem to like check mark, like check off everything that a monetary, a financial system should have and should be. And at
the same time, it's so mind stretching because it's like, why do we find value in this digital mathematical, I don't even know how to, like, it's a solution in a sense, but like, and I get why we find value in it, but someone might be like, well, what if I had a huge slab of gold like in my backyard? Like I could like chip away at that or something. It's very like unsustainable. But I'm just saying, like, I could look at gold and think like, wow, gold is so beautiful. I can like tangibly feel it and look at it and see its beauty, or like wear it, as jewelry. Whereas like, and then at the same time, there's so much movement towards modern technology. So it's like we should be embracing some aspects of modern technology, right?
Yeah.
Like that's why, like for my parents or even my friends, like they don't get it, like because it's so tech and mathematically driven and hard to even comprehend. Like, why would you put, your life savings in that? Or sorry, maybe not life savings, maybe the 1% you're not willing to lose.
Not life savings. For me, at least. I'm kidding.
Life savings.
I figured life savings, but
so when trying to describe Bitcoin, I like to break it down into two parts. You have Bitcoin, the network, and then you have Bitcoin, the asset, the token, right? And Bitcoin, the network, is what enables Bitcoin, the token, to accrue value, right? Because Bitcoin, the network, is distributed. Individuals running nodes around the world. It allows you to act in a peer-to-peer fashion. And that, in and of itself, the network and the distributed nature of it has incredible value in terms of being able to actually move money across the world, because it allows you to make transactions that they don't want you to make. Who is they? Like the entrenched financial system, global financial system across the world. And so not focusing on like drug dealers or people trying to buy assassinations on the internet, but like focusing on which Bitcoin certainly enables that use case, but it also enables people in Venezuela and Argentina, Lebanon to escape hyperinflation. So I like to tell a personal story. My wife, when we were living in New York City, she worked with, she had a very good friend at work who was from Venezuela, and her mother was back in Caracas and had no access to money. Didn't have enough money to pay for some medical supplies. And my wife's friend wasn't able to actually wire her money because there's sanctions against Venezuela from the U.S. government. So
the only way she could actually get money to her mother in a timely manner was to use Bitcoin, the network, to actually use the rails of Bitcoin in a peer-to-peer fashion to send it from herself to her parents in Venezuela so that they can then liquidate it locally to buy medical goods. So that network aspect of it has extreme value in terms of peers being able to interact without a third-party intermediary in the middle, somebody with subjective sanctions. There's a good argument to be made that a lot of the regulations and sanctions that are thrust on the traditional monetary system from corrupt governments aren't really just. And so Bitcoin allows you to route around that. So that network property has extreme value in the sense that it is an innovation of a protocol that allows you to exchange value, where the internet's an open protocol that allows you to exchange information. Bitcoin's a similar protocol that allows you to exchange value. Let me know if I'm getting too far into the weeds here.
No, that's...
Do you think that did a good job? Was that basically answering how does Bitcoin work? That was one of the questions I got from my friends. So
yeah, well, that explains the value proposition, how that networking actually happens, or how that peer-to-peer value prop is enabled. Is, again, individuals like myself right down here next to my computer. I have my node running, and so I have the rules of Bitcoin. I have the full ledger, the history of the Bitcoin's ledger on my computer. So I save that as a file on my computer, and I have a copy of it. And tens of thousands of people across the world are doing similar things, where they have their computer, they have their copy of the ledger. And so that makes Bitcoin extremely robust, and where if somebody were to come to my house and throw out my computer, like a policeman or something like that, like Bitcoin would survive, because there's thousands of other people with the state of the network around the world, geographically dispersed. So they can't, it's extremely hard to kill Bitcoin, the peer-to-peer network. People will be able to broadcast transactions whether or not my node gets destroyed or confiscated from somebody. So the way it works is these nodes basically have the rules of Bitcoin. They have the history of the Bitcoin ledger. And when somebody broadcasts a transaction, so I broadcast a transaction from my node, it goes out to another node. It says, hey, Marty's trying to send a Bitcoin transaction to Bethany. The node checks to make sure that transaction is within the rules of Bitcoin at any given point in time, and that I actually have the Bitcoin to send to you. It says, all right, this is a good transaction. It's following the rules. And then it propagates it to other nodes. And then those nodes basically signal to miners who are mining Bitcoin. We'll get into mining later, but we'll keep it 101 right now. Say, hey, these people are trying to send transactions. They're playing by the rules. They actually have the Bitcoin. So if you make a block, you could include these transactions in that block. And so the miners, as they're building blocks, will gather those transactions, and then Adam say, all right, these guys are playing by the rules. Their transaction gets added on the block, and then they start building another block. Again.
No, so like the peer-to-peer is like crucial and like so like life-giving and freeing. I feel like what we've heard about recently, what's happening in El Salvador, we've surfed down there a couple times, kind of like similar stories what you're talking about, like hearing about Bitcoin Beach happening in El Salvador, where that community is able to transact and like kind of come out from underneath the inflationary currency that they're like stuck under, and they're able to, I mean, it's like it had my mind thinking with like all these like big market corrections happening now, and like, oh man, those poor people, like their value. But if everyone is using the same currency, they're all using the same Bitcoin, they're all like, it doesn't matter, I guess you'd say, because they're still transacting in Bitcoin. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Like communities that are like Bitcoin based like that in El Salvador?
No, I think it's really like what they're doing in El Zante is really cool. We've had Mike, who started Bitcoin Beach, on the podcast before, and the way he's explaining what they're doing down there and the way they're experimenting is incredible to see. It proves that Bitcoin works for people who need it. In terms of like volatility, and Mike explained this on the podcast, like people using Bitcoin in places like El Zante understand that it has volatility, price volatility, when priced in fiat currency, mainly US dollars. So they'll act accordingly, having that in mind. Like, hey, this Bitcoin's going to be volatile, so I'll scrape off a bit into cash for what I need to make sure that I don't go bust. But other than that, I'm going to hold as much as possible. And speaking to Bitcoin's volatility, it makes sense. Like, the world is trying to accurately price a new monetary good for the digital age in real time. It's only 12 years old. You're not going to get perfect usability, distribution, and price stability out of the box. It's going to take time. So like, the price is like an index on people's confidence in Bitcoin at any given point in time. But if if you look at a chart over 12 years, that confidence has been going up and to the right. But there are steep rises and declines along the way, but that's just due to the nature that people are trying to accurately price this, and the fact that it's really scarce. So the scarcity of the token itself creates these liquidity crunch situations, particularly because a lot of people like to trade Bitcoin on margin. So they'll overextend themselves, and when the price drops between a certain point, it'll trigger what are known as cascading margins. So people who are making outrageous bets on whether or not Bitcoin will go up, they get margin called, and that makes the price go down a little bit quicker. But as we're seeing today, like that's what probably happened today. A bunch of people were trading on margin and got called down to $30,000, and now we're stabilizing around 40. It seems.
Nice.
I wanted to go back kind of like to why we need, or why Bitcoin could become like, or it already is really beautiful, but it could become and grow to be even more like essential for life. And I guess kind of going back to, a lot of my friends aren't necessarily questioning the financial system, and we haven't been taught that. I mean, I knew nothing about finances at 19 years old, let alone 25. By the time I turned 30 was when we started like really figuring things out more because of necessity and responsibilities to be taken care of. But a lot of my friends, they're not like thinking saving long term or, trying to get out from underneath that. Like, I don't know.
No, it's like people are like living day to day. It's normal. Yeah. It's normal to have debt. It's normal to just kind of go with the flow of what's happening around us. So like, is that what you're kind of saying?
Like, I want to answer some of the questions that people have that, like I have my friends, they ask like, why is Bitcoin better than altcoins? Because a lot of altcoins can move a lot faster. One friend asked, why is it better than stocks? I was like, well, that's going back to like understanding what's wrong with the US dollar to begin with. And how much is, I don't know, I don't want to be so negative, but there is some truth in that, like the root of all evil comes from money in a sense, a lot of it at least, from a Christian perspective.
The love of money.
The love of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The love of money. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think getting everyone to just like start like trying to pay attention, like where's the money coming from and where is it going and like why and how has that changed over the last 50 years, and just to really question and not just accept everything as like necessity or normal or okay or I just feel like the government's doing a lot of things, and I don't want to like hate on the government so much, but I also feel like in 5-10 years from now, all the money printing, and today, all the money printing that went on in the last 18 months is going to hugely affect everyone.
Yeah, no, I think it's important that you said 50 years particularly, because that's going back to 1971 when we and Richard Nixon officially separated the U.S. from the gold standard, any remnants that we had to the gold standard. And so I would argue, yes, the money printing has been pretty aggressive over the last year, but the effects of money printing since 1971 have actually been pretty pervasive throughout society. There's a great site out there to anybody who wants to learn about the effects of money printing, potential effects of money printing. You can't exactly say it was the exact cause, but I have a very strong inclination that it was the cause. You got a WTF happened in 1971 which is when we broke off the gold standard. And what you'll see since then is it's forced like you can't raise a family off a single income anymore. So you need both parents working, being away from their kids to actually be able to provide a life for them. For most people, you had like the cost going up pretty considerably over time, particularly in education, healthcare, and real estate. Not real estate so much, but education, healthcare, strongly subsidized by the government and money printing. I mean, education specifically, the university system, the fact that the government just gives out very low cost loans to anybody who wants them, and it's naturally going to make the price of university go up, because the schools are just like, all right, the government's giving out these loans, we can raise our prices, but that prices people out of the market. So, and this has been a slow, like death by 1,000 slices over the course of 5 decades. Slowly but surely, they've been printing more and more money, and backing themselves into a corner where they're accruing a bunch of debt. And to get themselves out of that corner, they have to print more and more money. So we're seeing them have to print 25% of the total monetary base, MEM2 money stock in 1 year. So how does Bitcoin compare to that? And so under that system where the government and the central bank in conjunction, so I would say the Treasury and the central bank, Federal Reserve, work together to expand the monetary base. And when they do that, they're basically expanding the pie. So if you have a wage, an hourly wage, where you're making $15 an hour, $20 an hour, if they're printing more and more money, you're still making $15 an hour. And so the more money that enters the system devalues your $20 an hour and decreases the purchasing power of that $20 an hour.
Yeah, so that was interesting this year. They didn't raise the minimum wage price along with all the printing. So people are really going to be getting pushed down and down and more down.
Yeah.
And I thought, and with like Jimmy and that group of authors with Thank God for Bitcoin, like they did such an incredible job, like going all the way back. They didn't even talk about Bitcoin until like the last couple of chapters, but like going back to the history of how the government from the time of history was essentially manipulating and debasing currencies, whether that was like by minting it and smelting down different types of metals into their coins, and then it continually happens. It's like it's inevitable. Like, so yeah, I know Bethany doesn't want to like bash government, but it's like too big. We see through it all. Like we've seen it through like not only we've been on the journey like years ago, seeing through like we take our health into our own hands. Like we have government intervention into our health shouldn't happen. And so like when we see like when it clicked for us to see like the government intervention in the financial realm, it was like, oh, of course this is happening there too, because it was already in our minds with everything else. But anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. It's like, yeah, there's just a lot.
It's the intervention. It has unequal effects across society, right? So there's this idea called the Kantian effect in monetary economics, where the people closest to the spigot of money creation, which is the Federal Reserve, and then the way they distribute their money is they have what's called the Fed window, where all the primary members, which are commercial banks like JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and other entities, get access to the newly printed money first. And so the way money's created, the Fed goes, the Treasury will issue treasuries, and the Fed will buy, and then the banks will buy those treasuries, or simplify more. The Treasury issues treasuries and then ends up on the Fed's balance sheet, and they create dollars to get those treasuries, and they give those dollars to the banks. And when that happens, at that point, basically the banks have first access to the money. So they have unequal access to the information flow, particularly around money, where they get the money, and then this is why you're seeing like stock prices at all times high. They're able to put it into assets, financial assets, particularly, that mostly only wealthy people own, or more well-off people, higher upper middle class to extremely wealthy people. They get the money and then they put it to these financial assets, and those financial assets go up in value on paper, making those people rich, and they can cash that out for cash, and the money doesn't percolate to the middle class, lower class. And by the time it does, prices have gone up because there's more dollars in the system. And so the money printing, the way it actually happens, the mechanism of how it flows from the Fed through the Fed window to the primary dealers that have access to that window, it gives them undue advantage compared to the little man who's working for $20 an hour and doesn't have that type of financial access. So those people, that would actually argue that's an immoral monetary system because it favors those closest to the spigot of money creation, and really drives inequality at the lower end of society, where again, people are in the hamster wheel making $20 an hour, and yet the people at the top are getting free access at very low interest rates to newly printed money. And then they can just drive it into assets and use those assets as collateral to buy other things. And where Bitcoin, it's different, right? It's there's no Federal Reserve that's actually deciding whether to expand the monetary base and manipulate interest rates. Like, it's written in stone, and anybody can participate in it. Anybody has the ability to plug a miner in and contribute to the addition of blocks to the Bitcoin ledger, and therefore access to newly distributed Bitcoin via the protocol. And so that completely changes the game, where instead of having one very centralized entity controlling when money is created, you have, like, theoretically the ability for anybody in the world to participate in the production of new Bitcoin blocks, and therefore the distribution of Bitcoin throughout the Bitcoin monetary network, if you will.
No, I think that's beautiful, because like Bitcoin can become that tool where, like, the problem is, like, it seems like we almost have like too big of a government, and like the original intention of government was like serve us and be like a tool for us, like, help us build roads and put in infrastructure. But then it just got just an avalanche of power and wealth. And I feel like Bitcoin is kind of like that tool for the everyday man to come and like kind of gain some of that sovereignty back. No,
it's calling back civil liberties and autonomy, like, from the government in the digital age. And that's the other thing. Like, money should be a market-driven good, a market-driven asset. Like, you should have the market coalesce on what is a good monetary good. For thousands of years, gold and sometimes silver were those goods. The market just said, hey, this gold, it's scarce, it's divisible, it's transportable, it doesn't tarnish. Like, this is a good money. And the market decided that. There was no government that said gold is the money. There were obviously governments that issued gold tokens and silver tokens, but they always coalesced on this market-driven commodity in gold as like a good money, where today it's just literally like, trust us, like, we're going to print these US dollars, and it's backed by the full faith of the US government. And so how much faith do people have in the US government is a very big question that we have to come to grips with right now. And as they print more and more money, they're losing credibility, if you will. It's like, all right, like, you're printing all this money.
Yeah, I wonder, like, how do you think the US dollar will fare? And, like, it's kind of been the front runner for a long time now. Do you think it will continue to be?
I mean, I think so for the foreseeable future. I don't know. That's Bethany, you're asking.
It's hard it's really interesting to think about. I mean, that's going down a whole nother, like.
So I read a lot of monetary history, particularly around hyperinflationary events. And what scares me, so I wrote a newsletter in April of last year. I read a daily newsletter about Bitcoin and macroeconomics. In a prior life, I was I worked for a managed futures fund as an analyst, and we traded currencies. And so I've been pretty involved in the macroeconomic news scene, just following it for over a decade now, which is hard to believe. But where was I going with this? I completely forget where I was going with this.
We have your newsletter, by the way. We get your newsletter.
I don't read it very often, but I get the emails. Sometimes if a headline catches me, I click it.
Thank you. I remember where I was going though. It's like some monetary history. And last year I wrote a newsletter and I said, hey, what the U.S. government is doing, what the governments in conjunction around the world are doing right now, let's focus on the U.S. What the U.S. government did, forced lockdowns, and then promised everybody they're going to print money and put it in their bank accounts. And noticing that, so like April 17th of last year, I read a newsletter like history is beginning to rhyme, because it's very similar to what they did in the Weimar Republic right before they had their hyperinflationary event. So in the Weimar Republic, it wasn't exactly the same.
Wait, was that England? No.
Germany.
Germany. Okay.
Yeah. So right after World War I, Germany lost the war, and they owed the Allied forces reparations. And the Allied forces said, you can't pay us in marks, like you need to pay us in gold or good currency. And the Weimar Republic was falling behind on their payments. And as a result, France came and occupied a part of their republic and said, we're going to stay here until you pay us back. And the leaders of the Weimar Republic at that time went to their factory workers and said, don't go to work. We're not working for these guys. Like, what we're going to do is we're just going to print money and give it to you. And it's not the exact same thing. We don't have an occupying force in America and the government saying don't go to work because we don't want to pay these guys. But we had COVID happen, and you shut down all the businesses, and you don't let people go to work, and then you print money and put it in their bank accounts. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. And at that point last year, I said there's probably going to be some inflation over the next 12 months. And fast forward to today, you had the April inflation print well above the Fed's expectations at 4.2%, and that's using the CPI, which is a manipulated metric and doesn't really capture real inflation. You just look at the price of lumber, the price of copper.
That's why it's like hard, because I think a lot of people, it's hard to discover like how the inflation is actually playing out. So let's think of like some easy examples. Like that's why I really like Michael Saylor. Like he busts out these like what do you call it? Analogies that are like very metaphors that are really common day. Like I think of like my parents, they bought a property down the road for $40,000 35 years ago or so. And today that property without the house would probably be worth like, 600,000 at least.
20x, it's 2,000%. Like,
So I just think like trying to help people like stretch their mind in that how does it look like in everyday? Like, how does that affect us in the everyday?
Your grocery bills go up, the cost of energy goes. So look at gas prices right now. So what we did is we shut down the economy, and we basically borked the supply chain. And economies are very complex. You can't just turn them on and off. They're not a light switch. So this is a good analogy. The economy is not a light switch. You can't turn it on and then turn it off and then just expect to turn it on and everything to go back to the way it was. These are very complex systems with very granular processes that happen at different parts of the economy to make the end products that we use today. So like housing being one of them. Like when you shut down the economy last year and the lumber mill shut down, they sent all their workers home, and that creates a supply crunch for lumber. And then you have people who want to buy homes, renovate homes, and they're getting money airdropped into their bank accounts. And so they're competing for scarcer goods, and we're not cutting down as many trees and making as many 2x4s with more and more money. So that's naturally, as they compete for that good that's becoming scarcer because people aren't in the mills to actually make more, it's going to make the price skyrocket. And lumber prices at their peak were up like 2,000% since last July. I think as early as this month. And so that's why you could buy like a stack of 2x4s beginning of last year for, I believe, for like $279. Today it's like $13, which is like,
oh my gosh,
that's the effect of inflation. And you're seeing this a lot, like at the grocery store. Beef prices are going up, wheat, soybean prices are going up. And so that makes cereal bread more expensive.
So I think it's like, this just gets my mind thinking of like, I think a lot of people are, on one hand, they're scared for their health because of the way they've been communicated to, in particular. So the fear is like building up. So yes, like let's close down the economy. Let's roll with it. Like this sounds like a great idea for the sake of our health. But then you look at the other end of the spectrum, and a lot of the people who are living month to month, dollar to dollar, like they're literally living off their next paycheck. So they get their money, the stimulus, but then they're never going to be able to get on the other side of that because now everything costs that much more. So they're pushing them down. And that's what like makes me so sad is it's forcing people into
desperate situations.
Close to poverty, really.
And then on top of that, like the past week, we've seen all this FUD around Bitcoin where
fear, misunderstanding, and doubt
about, So like, why would, there's all this from higher up authorities are saying like, Bitcoin is like, it's nothing. Like you're not going to be able to get it. So like people, I feel like they almost trust too much of what these higher up people are saying. So why like these podcasts and things like this need to get out there and be like, inform people and let people know like this is a tool for you that is going to help you
that you can access very easily, right? And that's the other thing. Like critical, this may seem harsh, but critical thinking is lacking these days. People allocate decision making to authorities and just take what they say at face value. But like again, so this is I turned 30 in a couple weeks, which is hard to believe. So I was 10 when 9/11 happened. I was a senior in high school when 2008 happened, and I've grown up in an era, in a very particular era, and very crucial parts of my life. These what's the word to describe them? Very
pivotal moments.
Pivotal moments, but like even more than that, like very like societal moving, like crazy events have happened at very impressional points in my life. When I was 10, I remember how emotional everybody was around 9/11, and then like I remember I was going to middle school and they were like ginning us all up as like 10, 11, 12-year-old kids to go to war with Iraq. And then fast forward 8 years and it's like, oh, maybe the pretenses for going to that war were false. Like there were no weapons of mass destruction. Like Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11, and we completely went over and bombed a foreign land and killed millions of people under false pretenses. Then you fast forward to 2008 and the financial system collapses, and then you see the stimulus after that, the TARP bill. You just had politicians politicking and trying to get favors that they wanted passed for their localities at a crucial time in America, like when the financial system was potentially collapsing and everybody was politicizing some these things. And then going on to college and studying economics and then working at a fund that traded currency markets. A part of that job was following central banks, the Federal Reserve, the Bank of Japan, ECB, you name it, around the world, and doing that for a few years and hearing these people who were supposed to have very fine control over the monetary system of the world, the monetary systems of the world, and just taking what they say year after year, and they're making these projections, they're never hitting them, they're kicking the can down the road, they're proving to actually not be competent at what they're supposed to be achieving. So for me personally, I've been very jaded by the traditional system, whether it be the government that wants to go to war, or the financial.
Not to mention, we're still in war in the Middle East, and like still killing millions of innocent people.
Yeah, and so that's what
that should not be happening.
Yeah, and they masquerade everything. Everything's very hush hush under the table. Don't worry, we've got this under control. You can't audit anything that's going on. You don't know where any of the money's going. You don't know what's being done in your name as a taxpayer. And so that's one of the reasons I've been drawn to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's very transparent. You can audit the rules for yourself. You can literally go into the code and read it for yourself and understand how it works and have certainty of how it will work. So juxtaposed with the system that's consistently lied to me and doesn't allow me to audit it growing up, Bitcoin is the exact opposite. And that's what draws me to it. And that's what I think the world needs personally, is something, a more open system like that is fair for everybody.
I like that. Fairness and money is like going to bring so much more freedom for everyone too. And just be able to allow people to get out from underneath that financial suppression.
Yeah, and it opens up for people globally. So another episode I recorded a couple of months ago, gentleman named Paul Toy who's building an app called Sphinx Chat. Actually, people will be listening to this podcast on Sphinx Chat. You can listen to the podcast and stream sats as you're listening per minute. People listen if they want to provide me value because I'm providing them value in terms of this interview. They can stream me sats and they'll listen via this app that Paul's building called Sphinx Chat. And he has another company called Stackwork. And this is basically trying to give people right now in Argentina and the Philippines, particularly people of basically who are not well off at all, or who are living in places where they don't have access to good jobs. He's trying to get them a job in a digital world. So Stackwork, what he does is he sends them phones preloaded with like a Bitcoin wallet and the Stackwork technology stack, and they basically do these mechanical Turk function where they basically, so they, CAPTCHA, where you have to go on a website, you have to point out the cone, the walkway, the bus. You have to like find the bus when you go on the internet before you go on a website. So instead of like those types of companies will actually pay people to do that. So he gets them these cell phones loaded with Lightning wallets that accept Bitcoin, and they can do this work and they get paid in Bitcoin. And so they're actually getting paid and being introduced to the digital economy in places where they would have no opportunities for jobs locally. So the fact that he can send them Bitcoin from the United States to the Philippines and Argentina, he's basically creating a digital workforce that can access a monetary system from their phones, and they don't have access to bank accounts or jobs at the very least. And so he wouldn't be able to send a wire over banks because they don't have bank accounts. You want to be able to send Western Union because they don't have bank accounts. The fact that it's software and you can just download an app on your phone and literally have a bank account in your hand really opens up the human potential around the world. All you need is a smartphone, which are becoming more prevalent, and the ability to download one of these wallets.
And then I imagine and hope they would have like a backup for their phone, because if they lose their phone.
Yeah, so right. you could back up your Bitcoin wallet, right? Yeah, maybe you write down your phrase. You keep that to your phone.
I was already stressing over their cell phones. I'm like, don't rely on your cell phone or you're losing it all.
That's so cool. I feel like there's a natural overlay. Like you're a surfer, we're surfers. I feel like the surfing community and Bitcoin community like fit naturally. But maybe it's because like we travel to all these third world countries and we see the poverty, we see the need for something like Bitcoin in the world, and it's like it's for everybody.
It's particularly what Paul's doing at Stackwork, right? You get that phone, cool. You get a job, but then you get access to like social media and the internet, so you're able to actually teach yourself things like on the side, like after work. Like you're opening up incredible possibilities to these people just because we live in the internet age, the information age. And so that's another way to describe Bitcoin, right? Like it is just another layer, a missing layer that's been missing on the internet stack. Again, we described earlier, the internet's an open system that allows you to exchange information. Bitcoin's an open system and allows you to exchange value. The internet was actually designed, when it was originally designed in like the 70s and 80s, there was intention to have a native payments layer in the internet, but there was never a technology to make it possible. So if you go to a website, the 404 error, when you go, it's like 404 error, this server does not have this piece of information. I go back to So that's a HTTPS error, that they don't have the files that you're requesting from the browser. There's something known as a 402 error, which is a payments error. It's never been utilized because there's never been a native payment layer of the internet until Bitcoin, since Bitcoin is an open system. So it actually fills in a part of the internet stack that's been missing for decades, but was originally thought of when they were first designing the internet. And that native payments layer opens up the possibility for crazy things. Again, like you're talking about, like, so for your blog, for instance, if you wanted to monetize your blog, you could literally put a half a penny paywall on it that's Lightning Network enabled, Bitcoin enabled. It says you can't access this content unless you give me 5 cents worth of Bitcoin or half a penny worth of Bitcoin. Not a lot of money in one go, but in aggregate, if you get thousands of people reading your blogs, tens of thousands, 100,000, millions, that adds up. So it also incentivizes people to make good content and allow people to access it very cheaply. And you can do that over the internet.
But you have to get everyone doing that though, or to be able to enter that in, right?
Yeah. And it takes time.
Eventually it'll be like really rad, but for now, patience.
Patience is key. Like I remember, gosh, I had to be like 7 or 8 years old, downloading AOL for my family. Got like a free AOL disc on the back of the Backstreet Boys Millennium album, and I had to download AOL, and it was dial up and things. So that was what, 99, 2000, 22 years ago. And look what we're doing now. Like we're video conferencing from halfway around the world. Bitcoin's 12 years old. I think, you'll be surprised with how quickly it happens. I'm not going to say it's going to happen tomorrow or next year or 5 years from now, but the ability to build on top of Bitcoin's protocol and extend the protocol to just inject it into things that we do in our everyday lives, like content, is becoming more and more apparent to more and more people. So it's just going to take time. Like I said earlier, it's not all going to come out of the box. The potential's there. The software is there. It's just going to take time for people to find it and start building it out.
Exciting.
Well, we gotta jump off here in a minute, but it's been awesome chatting with you, Marty.
I'm sorry if I get too into the weeds. I've actually been told I'm a bad Bitcoin 101. My wife, she gets disappointed in me.
No, I was talking with a girlfriend of a Bitcoiner the other day, and I was like, yeah, we should do like a basic, like have you come on the podcast with me and just get real like basic for everyone. But yeah, I feel like we didn't answer all the questions, but maybe we sparked some interest, and that's like where it has to start. You gotta like just get some interest going, and then people can go on their own journey.
Totally. And I think to distill it, Bitcoin is freedom in the digital age. This is what I like to tell people. Like we either get a digital panopticon where all of our financial transactions are tracked. You can only spend money where the authorities want you to spend money. They're allowed to print the money at will. You have no control or say in the matter. Or you get a system built on Bitcoin, which is free and open source. And Bitcoin is about freedom at the end of the day. Freedom in the digital age. We either get the Chinese digital panopticon exported to the rest of the world, or we get to fight and build this actually free and open source monetary financial system that respects human dignity and really is actually true to the ideals that America and free democracies were founded on.
Right on.
That was a perfect ending.
Right. We shall hodl and we shall keep spreading the word.
Well, if anybody has any questions they want to ask me, my DMs are open. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for doing what you do. I mean, you're a huge inspiration. We didn't even get into surfing, but that's another thing. If you're trying to sell it to like a surfing crowd, is like Bitcoin and the ocean are both humbling experiences. Like Bitcoin forces you to learn and ask these hard questions about money, and the ocean forces you to ask these hard questions about life, and it really helps you realize that you're a human and your mother nature is a strong beast that should be respected. Similarly, Bitcoin is a humbling experience. It changes you more than you're ever going to change it. Similar to how the ocean changes you when you surf a lot and you understand its power and the intricacies of that.
100%. Yeah, they're both very humbling.
Yeah.
Even after 30 years of surfing, I'm still like humbled by the ocean and feel like I got a lot to learn still. And I'm like still so much to learn about Bitcoin, but I'm stoked I'm finally going down that realm.
Now I've got like the juice, Bitcoin and energy too. Bitcoin is the currency of energy, which is a good thing. It takes scarce energy resources and turns them into a scarce digital good, which is memorialized on this ledger, which is actually beautiful from a conservationist perspective. You're conserving these scarce energy resources in this digital asset that holds value into perpetuity. So you're respecting the Earth's natural resources as well. But you two have to go. I can't keep rambling. Thank you. This was, I thought I was going to be asking.
Oh, wait, now you left everyone with questions about the environmental side, which the mainstream news is pushing heavily lately. maybe you should finish with a quick chime on that.
All right. Here's the spiel. So I work for a Bitcoin mining company, and we use natural gas as our source, our energy source. But the natural gas that we use is typically flared or wasted on oil fields. So when you poke a hole in the ground, oil comes out, gas comes out. You can't always get that gas to market to a pipeline. They literally just set it on fire and send it to the atmosphere. And there's a lot of methane leak, which is the stronger greenhouse gas, and CO2. You can't control the leak because of the wind. And so we show up and we say, hey, you're just going to waste that gas, sell to us for dirt cheap. We're going to pipe it to these EPA certified generators and use it to mine Bitcoin. We're going to take that gas that's wasted and we're going to turn it into the scarce digital good in Bitcoin. So we're helping to conserve pollution and waste upstream in the oil and gas market, but around the world too, Bitcoin miners are incentivized to find the lowest cost electricity, which happens to be stranded or wasted electricity a lot. So Bitcoin is actually helping us become extremely energy efficient. And so that's just the first order effect. Second order effect is Bitcoin mining, it ushers in a sound digital monetary system, which severely reduces the amount of misallocation of capital. So the fact that the Fed and the governments can print all this money and just send it to the banks, and then the banks can go give it loans out to new businesses, like there's no opportunity cost for spending money. And so like you can just print money, give it to people, and then they'll go take that money and use it on things that take energy and hurt the environment. So under a Bitcoin standard, you can't just do that. You have to weigh the opportunity cost of investing in something that may be wasteful, may not pan out, versus something that's actually advantageous and additive to society. So the first order effect is it finds wasted energy and uses that to secure the network. And then the second is it secures this sound monetary system in the digital world that actually will reduce waste by reducing capital misallocation that's enabled by the fact that they can just print money and give it to people to do things that probably otherwise wouldn't be invested in.
Boom.
I practiced this.
That was awesome. Right on. All right, we got to run, but
okay, thanks, Marty. Awesome. Good. Maybe we'll hit you up if we're in Ocean City area sometime.
I would love that. We can surf it.
Definitely. All right, take care, man.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye.